AbbVie.
A mission to promote religious harmony.
Pope Francis touching down in Indonesia on the most ambitious trip of his papacy. It is a 12-day, 4-country, 2-continent tour with stops in Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Timor-Leste, and Singapore. And this comes amid concerns for the Pope's health. The Pope does suffer from mobility issues, and he has been repeatedly hospitalized with respiratory illnesses. He turns 88 years old in just 3 months.
ABC's Inez de la Quintera. A new fraud warning about an old gift card scam.
When Mindy Jordan spotted an elderly woman pumping $100 bills into a Bitcoin machine in her neighborhood convenience store.
I said, ma'am, I believe you're being scammed. And she said, no, it's the bank. I got to pay this back.
Mindy Jordan's instinct was right. The 84-year-old woman was on the phone with a scammer. The Federal Trade Commission says swindles involving Bitcoin ATMs totaled $110 million last year, up tenfold from 2020. Jim Ryan, ABC News.
The data protection watchdog in the Netherlands has fined facial recognition startup Clearview AI nearly $34 million. It's over what the agency calls an illegal database of billions of people's pictures. The country's also warning other Dutch companies that Clearview services are banned. The online restaurant reservation site OpenTable says solo dining is up 29%. over the last 2 years. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
My doctor told me my blood pressure is borderline. I figured I could worry about it or do something about it. So I took control with Garlic Healthy Blood Pressure Formula. It works safely and naturally to help maintain healthy blood pressure with a custom blend of garlic, vitamins, and minerals. And it's odor-free. I'm taking charge with Garlic Healthy Blood Pressure Formula.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The term natural references only the garlic in the product. Use as directed.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
In for Bill Walter on this Tuesday afternoon, I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News Update. The news brought to you this hour by Quality First Insurance. A bad traffic accident earlier today. A woman was hospitalized after being hit by a car and dragged. The crash occurred around 2:45 p.m. near 1400 North Main Street. Logan City Police Lieutenant Brooks Davis said the woman was reportedly riding her bike eastbound on 1400 North when she was struck by a vehicle. According to emergency radio traffic, the woman was then dragged for approximately 20 feet. When officers arrived on the scene, they reported the woman was partially under the vehicle. Firefighters and paramedics were called to the scene. They transported the woman to Intermountain Logan Regional Hospital with critical injuries. The crash, meanwhile, remains under investigation. Well, in a fatal crash occurring last night in South Logan. I'll get to that coming up in just a minute. As weather-wise, we're looking at a nice afternoon. A mix of sun and clouds. Temperatures have been in the mid-80s, and we're going to stay right there through the rest of the afternoon as that chance of showers just has not materialized. But we still could see some isolated thunderstorms overnight tonight as temperatures will drop into the mid to low 50s overnight. Tomorrow will be into the low 80s with some smoke and haze returning to the skies, and then high 80s for Thursday and Friday. And another chance of some rain coming towards the end of the weekend and the first of next week. Well, a 36-year-old Hiram man died last night in a motorcycle crash in South Logan. The accident occurred at around 9:48 p.m. near 1115 South Main Street. Logan City Police Lieutenant Brooks Davis said the motorcyclist was traveling southbound when he reportedly lost control of his bike. He then fell into the southbound lane of travel where he was struck by a vehicle that was following. Paramedics rendered life-saving efforts at the scene, but the motorcyclist passed away from his injuries. Davis said the victim was identified as Nico Oliva. He was wearing a helmet at the time of the crash. Now, according to his Facebook page, Oliva went to Logan High School and was employed by Logan City Environmental Department. The crash remains under investigation. Well, an 18-year-old man was arrested after veering off of the roadway in Juab County and crashing through a fence yesterday morning. According to a probable cause affidavit from the Utah Highway Patrol, Miguel Antonio Toledo Rodriguez was driving southbound on I-15 in Juab County at around 1 a.m. The trooper clocked him at going over 148 miles an hour in an 80-mile-an-hour zone. Two troopers attempted to pursue the motorist. Eventually, the motorist veered off of the road and then went into a field where he crashed. Rodriguez was booked into Juab County Jail on speeding and reckless endangerment charges. And a resident was displaced after a house fire yesterday morning. The fire was reported around 8:30, according to Kelly Bird, a spokesperson for Unified Fire Authority. When fire crews arrived, they found heavy smoke coming from the deck area of the back side of the home. The fire reportedly had moved up into the eaves and attic and then spread throughout the entire length of the house, according to Bird. Now, one person was inside the home at the time of the fire but was able to escape without injury. Bird said that there was also a cat inside the home who was later found and brought to safety. The damage is estimated to be at around $150,000 to $200,000, while the cause of the fire remains under investigation. You can get more on these and other stories at CashValleyDaily.com. I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News Update.
Hey, get prepared for the hunting season. Did you remember to bring your hunting gear, your sleeping bags, and coats into Mount Logan Laundry? With their 55 and 80-pound washers and dryers, they can do any job. And while you're at it, bring in the comforters and blankets and get ready for the colder months ahead. Try Mount Logan Laundry. For a few quarters, you can use their large-capacity washers and dryers and be done in no time. Free Wi-Fi and drop-off service. They're at the corner of 5th East and 9th North in Logan, or in Brigham on the corner of 1st East and 7th South. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town.
News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
The Cache Valley Latino Festival is coming to Logan Center Street September 14th, and you're invited. The celebration begins at 11 a.m. with a parade. Enjoy music and live performances throughout the day. Mouth-watering food trucks and vendors offering handmade crafts. It's a celebration of Latin American heritage and culture that everyone can enjoy. So bring your family and friends and let's celebrate. The Latino Festival is sponsored by Members First Credit Union. Large enough to provide the services you need, small enough to provide the services you deserve. Gosner Foods. The straws are back on Gosner Milk. Pick up some high-quality dairy products at the Gosner Food Store. Anderson Seed and Garden and Logan Extermination, keeping you green during the summer and in the holiday spirit in the winter. Presto Products, now hiring. Apply for a career today at Presto Products in Lewiston. And Connect Public Transit, formerly CVTD, connecting you with the people and places that matter most. Find your route at rideconnectutah.gov. The Cache Valley Latino Festival, September 14th on Center Street in Logan, where culture and community come together.
When it comes to protecting yourself and your loved ones, you deserve the best. This is Matt Robbins with Quality First Insurance, an Alera Group company. We believe that obtaining life insurance should be affordable and worry-free. As an independent auto owners insurance agency, we work with top-notch carriers to find the best policy for your unique needs. You can rest assured that you're getting the best coverage and the best price. Quality First Insurance, 435-752-0101.
Prices have been reduced again during Anderson's Seed and Garden Cash and Carry Sale. This is Mark at Anderson's. We have marked down all remaining trees, shrubs, evergreens, and perennials to 40% off. But if you pay with cash, you can save an additional 10% off your purchase price during our annual Fall Cash and Carry Sale. That's 50% off a wide selection of our top-notch plants that are in stock right now. Get them now before they're gone, but hurry while the selection is the best. Anderson Seed and Garden, 69 West Center in Logan.
Get ready for the 2024 Top of Utah Parade of Homes, presented by Willow Lakes. Explore stunning custom-built homes, showcasing exquisite design and architecture. September 12th through the 14th and the 19th through the 21st. Platinum sponsors Burton Lumber and Remax Peaks invite you to experience Cache Valley and Bear Lake's finest living. Mark your calendars to be inspired by these beautiful homes. Get tickets at Bank of Utah and USU Credit Union or online at topofutahparadeofhomes.com. That's topofutahparadeofhomes.com.
KVNU's For the People with Jason Williams and Bill Walter.
And it is Utah known as the fraud capital of the world. Not because we have more people committing fraud, but because we have so many people falling for it.
Going beneath the headlines and connecting you to the newsmakers.
The radio is a great way to get the word out to a lot of people in an emergency. So we thank you for your help and being a partner with us.
For the People on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM. Online at 610kvnu.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
Welcome to KVN News for the People. Monday, September 3rd. I'm Jason Williams. Greg Peterson joining us here later on in the show for this month's For the People Book Club. Normally in the book club, we talk about nonfiction, the latest book of one a week on average that Mr. Peterson has read. This week, though, we are going to be talking all things Mark Twain. And Craig says one of the reasons he wanted to do this today is that he was reading some Mark Twain and he realized that if you are struggling or just in general feeling anxiety towards the political headlines of any given day during this presidential election year, it might be helpful to read some Mark Twain, at least find a way to laugh about it. So that's coming up in hour 2 of today's show with the For the People Book Club. Here in hour 1, a report from the state auditor taking the wind out of the sails of first primary Republican candidate and state lawmaker Phil Lyman, now write-in campaign for governor Phil Lyman, taking the wind out of his sails when it comes to his reason for launching a write-in campaign after losing the primary in June. It's targeted mainly on his accusation, without evidence, we have to add, that Spencer Cox didn't legitimately gather enough signatures to get on the ballot. Phil was the convention choice. Utah GOP delegates preferred him as a candidate. There were about 3,500 delegates at the convention this year voting on that. Hundreds of thousands of registered Republicans, though, got to weigh in the primary and preferred Cox by a wide margin. Phil's upset about that, understandably, and he is convinced that his very decisive win with 3,500 delegates voting during the convention is reflective of where Utah Republicans really are at. So his claim is twofold. He claims that everyone who voted, or most of the people who voted in the primary, were actually secretly registered Democrats. There is, again, no evidence to support this. Democratic Party registrations didn't drop enough to have that be the case. Now that we have those numbers, you can see Democrats only lost a few thousand voters. Republicans lost more, actually. And the biggest segment of the voting population to make gains in voter registration this year was the unaffiliated group, the I hate both parties crowd. So there's no evidence that the votes in the primary on June 25th were actually secret Democrats. These were registered Republicans, and they preferred Cox. Phil has mounted a write-in campaign. He made that official on August 25th, filing the paperwork as a write-in candidate, which is necessary here in Utah. And he's asking voters, again, to vote for him over Spencer Cox in the general election now, where there is also Brian King on the ballot. Democrats are giddy about this. In the primary, Phil got enough votes out of those who did vote. Cox got, there were hundreds of thousands of voters, and Cox got tens of thousands more. It wasn't a close win at all. But Phil did get, 45,000 votes. That's enough, if those voters remain loyal to Phil, to throw the gubernatorial election to the Democrat. If those voters steal enough from Cox's bucket, the Democrat wins, which I can't even imagine what would happen here in Utah should that come about. Obviously, at that point we'd be you're stuck with whoever wins this general election for 4 years, no matter what, or you're lucky to have them, depending on your perspective. But Phil, of course, would be a pariah at that point for causing that to happen. The legislature would lose its ever-loving mind, and it already has lost about 75% of its mind as a collective body. But it's going to be interesting, to say the least. So Phil is getting pressure from within the Republican Party to, as one Republican operative told me, just shut up and go away, was how one Central Committee member told me the general attitude is within the party. This is causing them a headache. They're worried about this. Phil, though, in his campaign, which is I'm not sure if he has a campaign still. I know during the primary, his campaign was just him and about 5 volunteers. It might just be him now. I don't know. He's not been very active outside of his neck of the woods in campaigning. He was at the Onion Days parade in Payson over the weekend, so he is actively campaigning down there. And you know, there's an argument to be made. It's a weak argument, but there's an argument to be made for getting that rural vote maybe being enough. That's how, you know, in a very recent congressional primary, special election, sorry, not primary, that is how it was decided. Rural voters overrode voters in Utah County in a congressional district, leading to Congresswoman Celeste Malloy, who recently won re-election outright, but she won that original special election by appealing only to rural voters in rural parts of the state. And that was a risky theory because that's never been enough before, but it was enough for her in that race. Gubernatorial race, however, is a statewide race. That means Cache County gets a say, Salt Lake County gets a say, Weber County, Box Elder County, Davis County, Provo, Grand County, Washington County. All 29 counties get a say in a statewide race. Voters in those counties. So uphill battle for Phil. And again, some pressure from within his own party to stop this because they're worried he might peel enough votes off from Spencer Cox that Brian King, the Democrat, wins. And all of this for Lyman is built around, again, his claim, twofold claim. One, he claims that the voters in the primary weren't actually Republicans. Again, there is no evidence of that. Voter registration numbers just didn't change enough to have that be the reason Cox won the primary. It's a false claim. His second claim, though, is that Cox shouldn't have been on the ballot on the primary anyway because he didn't win the convention. Phil won that. 3,500 Republican delegates voted for, well, not all of them, but it was like I think it was 60-40 split. It was basically the same split you see Democrats get in general election races against Republicans. That's how much Phil won the convention vote of delegates. But again, in the primary, Cox walked away with almost 15% over Phil. That's tens of thousands of votes for Cox that Phil didn't get. Phil's claim is Cox shouldn't have been on the ballot. His second claim. The first one, again, completely false. No evidence for that whatsoever. The second one of his claims for mounting this write-in campaign after losing the primary is that he doesn't believe Cox had valid signatures to even be on the ballot on June 25th. His justification for this is there is an investigation into a signature collection company that was employed by several Republicans in southern Utah. In one legislative race, that company actually had to fire an employee in the end, they cost an incumbent his job, a popular incumbent that was probably going to win re-election, didn't end up getting on the ballot in the primary and didn't go to convention because he was planning on being on the ballot. And the signature collection company had hired an employee, which they've since fired, that was collecting invalid signatures. So when they were turned into the county clerk's office in Washington County, county clerk office has to verify the signatures. They do that by comparing signatures and signators' information with voter registration file to see, okay, this person is an actual registered voter, this person isn't, etc. They found out that state lawmaker in the end didn't have enough signatures to qualify for the ballot. Lost his race outright at that point. I don't know if he plans to sue the signature collection company or what, or if he can. But either way, an investigation has been launched, and it has been announced that is a criminal investigation. So someone's going to jail over this, or maybe facing criminal charges over that specific signature gathering issue. Phil, though, is taking that and saying, this happened statewide. Well, again, there's no evidence for that. We know it happened in that race, in that county, with that one employee of this widely used by almost all Republicans signature gathering company. And it happens. It's unfortunate, and this company deserves all the flack they're getting for not knowing they had an employee improperly trained or just outright, not doing the job right. They should kind of check in on that thing with their employees during the signature gathering process, if you ask me, because that's their one job. And that criminal investigation is underway. But again, this is not a statewide investigation. The signatures for getting on the ballot were actually verified by the Davis County Clerk's office, and the Davis County Clerk has come forward several times and said what Phil Lyman is saying is simply not true. We verified these signatures against the voter registration file. It's the same process we've used for 13 years. Nothing has changed. And the Cox campaign, now, one of the issues that Phil has pointed to is that the Cox campaign turned in 6 more signatures than they needed to get on the, or 60 more signatures than they needed to get on the ballot. And Phil has said, well, isn't that odd that they get exactly the number of signatures they need plus 60? That seems strange. I'm suspect, Phil says. Well, what it is they have this gigantic bucket of signatures, and they turn in and turn in and turn in until the clerk's office says, all right, you've hit the threshold, you'll be on the ballot. And then they stop turning signatures in. They had the Cox campaign has said we had another 8,000 signatures we could have turned in, but there was no point in paying anyone to do that or taking up the clerk's time when we qualified for the ballot when we went 60 over the threshold. Makes sense, right? Anyway, so long story short, today the state auditor weighed in. The audit comes amid this what has become a wide rift, as I understand it, within the Utah GOP, if not with the regular voting populace of the state, who maybe aren't even paying attention to any of this or don't even know Phil's running as a write-in candidate. But within the Utah GOP, everyone knows this is happening, and it's split delegates, it's split voters who are very active and plugged in with the party. And so the state auditor was asked by the legislature to dig into this. The legislature hoping that the state auditor could do an audit and it would shut all this down, which is silly because no matter what you come up with, Lyman is going to run as a write-in candidate. He obviously plans to do this. I don't know if he has a book to sell or what, but to call it a long shot is an understatement. He's going to lose by more. Write-in candidates always do. And he says he'll drop this whole thing if Cox will just release the signature files that their campaign turned in. Now, the Cox campaign can't legally do that because of state law that says if a voter wants their voter registration information marked as private, they can choose that when they register to vote. This makes sure that your address and email address and phone number, anything you might provide with your registration for the state to contact you about your ballot, is not shared with third parties who might want to market to you, or because voter registration files are purchasable. So voters have said, my information is private. I don't want the state selling it. That's state law. The Cox campaign would be breaking the law to do what Phil Lyman's asking for. So again, the legislature said, all right, let's put this to bed. We'll do an audit. State auditor did an audit, hasn't put it to bed, by the way. Phil's response to the audit as it was released this morning is, well, of course, this is what the state auditor says. He's on Team Cox. Going after John Dougall is probably not the smartest thing for any candidate in Utah to do. He's very popular in the Republican Party, and he's been extremely popular as auditor. He's made that office into a powerhouse. First time an auditor has done that in about a generation here in Utah. That said, their audit release today said this challenges the authenticity of the more than 28,000 signatures that Spencer Cox's reelection campaign turned in to qualify for the June primary ballot. Are legit. The auditor said upon an intensive audit, it is statistically impossible for the Cox campaign to have not qualified for the ballot. That's an auditor way of saying, look, we didn't look at every signature, but we took random 1,000 signature samples and did our own audit working with county clerks to verify signatures against voter registration files. And they said, every time they pulled 1,000 signatures randomly out of that 28,000 signature, they didn't find a single error by the clerk's office. Dougall wrote in a statement today, we conclude that it is statistically likely each of the candidates in Utah, every candidate in Utah that met the statutory threshold of required valid signatures to be on the ballot was justified in being there and had indeed met the legally required signature threshold. In addition, each candidate had ample time before the deadline to gather additional signatures had the clerk's office validated some of the signatures, saying that, this was all months before the deadline. So if the clerk had said your signatures are invalid, they had plenty of time to collect more signatures and still get on the ballot. They all stopped because the clerk's office had said, all right, you qualified. Dougal said his office focused in this audit on analyzing a sample of protected signatures. Again, they did, it was 1,200. They did several sets of random 1,200 signatures from the 28,000 signatures the Cox campaign turned in, and they didn't find a single signature in any of their random 1,200 signature samples draws that was not a valid signature. So they said they did enough of these that it is statistically impossible for Phil's claim to be correct. Dougal said he did note there were 4 exceptions from the primary sample of 303 signatures that they did. So they went through this. He said during the process, he personally, of the 1,200, reviewed 303 signatures in each 1,200 signature set because he was curious himself, not because he believes the claims against the Cox campaign, but because he wants to know if these companies are doing their jobs right, that the state oftentimes, or the candidates oftentimes employ. And he said he personally found 0 errors by the Davis County Clerk's Office in certifying these signatures or verifying these signatures for ballot certification. So the calls for the audit, again, came from the legislature, hoping to kind of put Phil Lyman's election claims to bed. He said this morning in response again, he's not buying this audit. He thinks now that John Dougal's in on the the scheme to get Governor Cox elected. It's weird, to say the least. But he lost to Cox by a lot. Total here, about 40,000 votes is what he lost to Cox to in the primary election. That's a decisive win for Cox. The write-in campaign is going to go worse for him than that because he's a write-in candidate and he's out of money at this point. I don't know what to make of any of this. The unfortunate thing, though, is, again, that this rift has now developed inside the Utah GOP, and Chairman Rob Axon may be the one to pay the price for this in the end. He has a lot of folks unhappy with him on 2 different sides, some for not shutting all of this down, others for not jumping on board with Lyman and the election integrity myths. And we'll see if this leads to a shakeup. We won't know that until next spring at the GOP organizing convention, but that's the latest on that. So on your ballot, you will see Spencer Cox and Brian King and a handful of, I think there's 3 third-party candidates you'll see there for governor. At the bottom, there will be, as is always the case, there's an other spot and a line where you can write someone's name in. Quick note on that, if you do plan to vote for Phil Lyman via write-in, spelling is important, but there is some leeway on this. If it's obvious, like say someone writes Phil Lyman and puts 2 L's in his name, whereas it only has 1, if they can decipher what your intended vote was, so you write Phil Lyman, but you put 2 L's, and there's only 1, that will still count. But if you write just any other random name, your vote is at that point completely invalidated, because for your vote to count, you actually have to be registered with the state as a candidate, and Phil has now done that. So he is registered as a write-in candidate, so your vote for him would count. We'll see where this all goes. We'll be back with more of KVNU's For the People on the other side of these headlines with KVNU's Will Philwright in for Bill Walter.
Well, thank you, Jason. While reserving their final approval, members of the Cache County Council seem to be in support of a proposed Inland Port Authority project in the area of Hyde Park. During their regular meeting last week, the council members welcomed Hyde Park Mayor Brian Cox, who explained the tentative plan for the development proposal. Now, the ultimate goal of those discussions is to investigate the possibility of creating an inland port development area in Hyde Park and on adjacent land north of the Logan Cache Airport, which is now part of unincorporated county area. Now, the land also has access to railroad facilities and other elements that would be needed to create a good corridor for economic development, according to Mayor Cox. Now, the agreement would be that county officials would allow for the annexation of that unincorporated area into Hyde Park, which already has water and sewer infrastructure in place to support its development. Now, that proposal was strongly supported by Councilmember Mark Hurd last Tuesday night, who said that he had already been in discussions about the development concept with Mayor Cox. The Utah Inland Port Authority is a statewide agency that aims to improve Utah's logistics infrastructure and to make the state a more competitive player in the global economy. Now, ultimately, members of the county council declined to take any action on the inland port proposal yet until Hyde Park officials can provide additional details about their plan. Well, Davis County Sheriff's Search and Rescue were called out to help a dirt biker following a crash that happened over the weekend. According to the sheriff's office, they were called out Saturday night at around 8:16. Now, officials said the 30-year-old was riding his bike along Skyline Drive when he accidentally drove his bike off of a steep embankment. First responders say the man's friend saw the accident and climbed down to help. The man was trapped about 125 feet down the mountain on a rocky hillside and, according to officials, had sustained serious injuries, including a broken leg and several lacerations. Now, South Davis Metro firefighters were first on the scene and used a rope system to make their way down to the biker, who was conscious and breathing. Davis County Search and Rescue then called in a helicopter to evacuate the victim. According to officials, the man was hoisted from the mountainside back to a staging area where paramedics transported him to the hospital. A second rope system was also set up to assist the man's friend. And if you're looking for romance in 18th century costumes and oh so polite and witty phrasing, then the Utah Theater is the place to be this month. The Hub for Classic Movies will be offering a Jane Austen Film Festival that begins tomorrow, actually. Jane Austen, of course, an English writer known primarily for 6 novels, which tended to lampoon British landed gentry at the end of the 18th and early 19th centuries. Her plots often explored the dependence of women on marriage and their frantic pursuit of favorable social standing and economic security. The Austen Salute will be beginning tomorrow night with the biopic Becoming Jane, and then the other classics will follow, including Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. Well, mostly clear skies the rest of the afternoon as we've been in the mid-80s today. Tonight we'll drop into the mid to low 50s overnight, still with mostly clear skies, a few clouds. Small chance we could see some isolated showers like we saw last night. That did bring us over 1/10 of an inch of rain. And then heading into tomorrow, smoky skies, temperatures in the low 80s. We'll get back into the high 80s for Thursday and Friday and stay that way for the weekend. And looks like by Sunday could see some more rain. I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News Update.
ABC News, I'm Daria Alvinger. The Justice Department is charging 6 senior Hamas members in the kidnapping and murders of U.S. citizens during the October 7th attack on Israel.
The heinous acts that we have seen by Hamas is devastating. And those 6 hostages, their families are grieving. The president was very clear about that in his statement over the weekend, and he's going to continue to work around the clock.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says President Biden is committed to working with allies to reach a deal to bring hostages home and to provide relief to protect Palestinian civilians. California Governor Gavin Newsom declaring a state of emergency in the city of Rancho Palos Verdes. That's where landslides have disrupted utility services and prompted evacuation orders. Former President Trump's waived his right to attend his new federal election interference case, and he's also asked his attorney to enter a plea of not guilty. This is ABC News.
Roof Rescue is your local roofing specialist, dedicated to keeping your home safe and dry no matter the weather. Their team of experienced roofers is here to serve you, providing top quality service at affordable prices. From minor repairs to complete roof replacements, they've got you covered. Remember, your roof is your first line of defense in protecting your family from the elements. So don't wait until the next storm to discover your roof problems. Call Roof Rescue today at 435-999-4268. They're your trusted local roofing experts, here to keep your home safe and dry. Roof Rescue, celebrating 10 years of providing watertight peace of mind.
From ABC News, Wall Street now a sell-off to start a holiday-shortened trading week. The Dow plunged 626 points and NASDAQ gave up 577 and the S&P closed down 119. Most of the S&P 500 sectors closed lower and tech stocks had their worst day in 2 years. September tends to be volatile for stocks, and this drop may only make investors more nervous. One reason for the jitters, Friday's August jobs report, which could show if the July numbers were a one-off or if employment really is slowing. We'll get some insight on that Wednesday from ADP's monthly hiring report. It only measures private companies, but economists say it's often a good indication of what to expect from the Labor Department. Table for one, please. More people are choosing to dine in restaurants alone. Reservation site Open Table says solo dining requests in the U.S. are up 29% over the past 2 years, and now some places are redoing their menus to accommodate solo diners. Daria Alvinger, ABC News.
So it dawns on me. I need to do something with my yard before the weather gets bad. We built our home last year, but I wasn't in the mood to tackle landscaping, so help me play this out in my head. Dig the sprinkler system, order trees, shrubs, boulders. Do we want flower beds next to the house? Maybe a retaining wall? You know what? Forget it. Call Canyon Landscaping. Landscaping is what they do.
Don't stress over your landscape this fall. Look for the leaf. Canyon Landscaping, 752-3838.
This is Dr. Red, chiropractic physician with Red River Health and Wellness. Are you suffering with fatigue, brain fog, headaches, intestinal issues, weight gain, and you haven't been able to find any answers?
Before I started at Red River, I was having a lot of stomach pain. I was overweight, severe anxiety, some depression. I had been to multiple doctors. I'd been to specialists. We had done tests, and no one could find anything that was wrong.
Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
I'm on anxiety medicine. I've lowered my dose, and I'm working with my doctor to continue to lower it. I'm sleeping through the night. I have energy for my kids. I've lost 30 pounds. I just feel really good.
Our goal is to teach you and educate you so you know how to manage your condition a lot more effectively, and you know what to do and what not to do for the rest of your life.
Schedule your appointment today at 855-55-RIVER. Red River Health and Wellness with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Call Red River today.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. A majority of voters continue to hold negative feelings about the direction of the country. We'll look at new data from the Wall Street Journal. Also, workers without a high school degree are propping up the economy in many ways, but there are consequences to that trend. And the top 5 destinations for a vacation with your dog. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. We've had a couple of different inquiries from listeners over several different issues, but one that surprised me the most, that Ag Day T-shirt from the opening game Saturday, USU football's opening game. They when you bought it, you had the option when you bought a ticket for another, I don't know, 25 bucks, something like that. You could actually get the Ag Day T-shirt that had the one-time use Holstein speckled helmet in the center of the T-shirt. Well, a lot of folks apparently didn't see an email that went out late Saturday to many of them saying, hey, to get your T-shirt, you got to pick it up before the game at AgFest, and that ends at 5:30. So a lot of people didn't see that, and so people were shooting me emails saying, hey, do you know anything where you guys are affiliated with USU and the game broadcasts? Do you know anything about these T-shirts? How do we get them? If I didn't see that email till after the game Saturday. I don't know, but I did shoot an email out to assistant athletic director, deputy athletic director. Let me get that right. Bobby Nash. And so I'll let you know as soon as I hear back on that. You're also welcome to just call the athletics office as well. That might be a faster route if you're super concerned about it. But shirts were available for pickup at FanFest. prior to the start of the game, and FanFest wrapped up at 5:30 on Saturday. But like I say, I did shoot out an email to Deputy Athletic Director and External Engagement Manager Bobby Nash, and I'll let you know if I hear back from him before the end of the show, or I'm sure I'll hear back before tomorrow morning, or tomorrow's show. So another inquiry that we've gotten, and this one is heartbreaking, and I have to let everybody know too. I saw, but I didn't see this, but I was caught up in this. I had to late last night. I realized that there was in the forecast a prediction of rain. I just recently stacked some hay and had yet to cover it, thinking I had a nice window. I should have known better. And so I see that this pretty intense thunderstorm is likely to head through Cache Valley overnight. So late last night, I had to run in and buy a tarp. Who hasn't been there at 9:30 at night on a Sunday? Just me. Anyway, so I went in, I did my shopping, and as I was leaving, I was actually unable to get back out on the street due to a high number of emergency vehicles that had, for the most part, closed the entire road, both north and southbound, for the most part, between the corner of Walmart there and roughly up to the Chevron gas station there on Main Street. So that entire stretch there was kind of blocked off. They were funneling people through the parking lot of Planet Fitness and around Walmart to get to that light and head into Providence, or to head further on south. All I saw were, several fire trucks, an ambulance, and a lot of sheriff's deputies doing traffic control. So those who have asked, I guess some folks, got rerouted by that last night coming through. It was around 10 o'clock, I believe, when it was reported this accident happened. But Will talked about it in the news there, but a listener just asking again, saying, hey, I noticed Main Street was closed there for about a block late last night. Any idea what that was? Tragically, it was a hireman who was killed, lost control of his motorcycle, and it sounds like the motorcycle, and again, no details on how. I thought for a second maybe it was unexpectedly wet roads, but the rain hadn't really started yet at that time. It didn't start until about an hour later. But either way, that's just speculation on my part. But a 36-year-old hireman last night lost control of his motorcycle and entered oncoming traffic. He fell, it sounds like, from the motorcycle into the southbound lane of travel, and he was struck by an oncoming vehicle that was headed south. Paramedics arrived and began life-saving efforts at the scene, but the man passed away from his injuries at the scene, and the victim was identified as Nico Oliva. He was wearing a helmet at the time of the crash, but due to the nature of the incident, he was, again, pronounced dead at the scene of the accident. And that was why that stretch of road was closed last night, for those asking. So, all right, moving on. You've all heard the Three Little Pigs story, and it's been so long, I got to brush up on my childhood reading. I can't remember. It's straw, sticks, and brick, I think, the homes are built from, and the big bad wolf huffs and puffs, etc. I thought of that today as I read this story. Now, this individual, a Utahn, she said she's doing this for a couple of reasons. One, she wanted so in Salt Lake County, they've legalized, and I think we should talk about this here in Cache Valley more. I think there are areas in Cache Valley. Well, I know there are areas in Cache Valley where this is legal, but I think if someone wants to do this with their property, it shouldn't be a really lengthy uphill battle for them to do it within reason, because some properties, of course, aren't going to be right for this. But it's technically known as an ADU, a separated dwelling unit from your home, but on your same lot. And of course, it's not equal in size, and the areas that do allow this in their zoning have some specific rules about size. You can't just use this ADU loophole to build a second home on your lot and sell it to someone. No. For example, in Salt Lake County, it has to be it can't be bigger than 650 square feet, and it can't be sold. It can be rented, but not sold. But these are colloquial. These are called mother-in-law apartments because that's traditionally what they've been used for. Mother or mother-in-law. Maybe you've got an aging parent or something like that, and they need a place to live, and you don't want them right there in the house with your family and the kids. That's usually what happens. But you want them close because they need maybe some special assistance or just want to be close. And so people would build these mother-in-law apartments out back. Now, of course, mother-in-law apartment is kind of a joke. That there's a reason you don't want the mother-in-law in the house because oftentimes you don't get along with the mother-in-law. That's where the joke comes from. But again, most cities who allow this call them ADUs. And these so in Salt Lake County, for example, or Salt Lake City, since this was first allowed by the city council, about 70 permits have been approved. And stories in the Salt Lake Tribune article of people renting them out for, I mean, this wouldn't be horrible. And an additional $2,100 a month in rent coming in. And yeah, so, but this story caught my eye because the first thing I saw, I thought I misread. And this woman says she's doing this for two reasons. Her name's Susan Klinker. And she said she's doing it for two reasons. One, she had need of an ADU at a time. It had to do with her aging parents. Unfortunately, before she was finished with this, she lost her parent that needed, or that she planned to have live in this ADU, this mother-in-law apartment in her backyard. And but she said she decided to continue ahead with it anyway because it had gotten to be such a unique project. Now, Klinker said she is very concerned about climate change and the effects we're seeing from climate change here in Utah, the Great Salt Lake and more. And so she said as they were building this, and she said, I'm fortunate enough to have the money to do this, but she said they wanted to experiment a little bit. And first, she said it started out with looking at, creative ways to use natural light to both heat or creative ways to address natural light, to either use it as heating or to control it to keep temperatures cool, to reduce the amount of air conditioning or the time air conditioners have to run. She said that's where it started. We just started looking at skylights. We started looking at these big movable flaps that you can put on windows and get kind of creative about it. 'Cause she said, we're talking about a small space here. And she said they installed what was called a passive solar, which basically negates the energy needs. It supplies enough of its own energy that if she could reduce the time the air conditioner was running or the furnace is running in the wintertime in this little 650 square foot apartment she'd built in her backyard, it would be neutral. It would be carbon neutral. And that was, she said, okay, we want to do that. And she said it started there, just kind of for fun. And then as they got further into the design and she started talking with more and more architects and designers and all of that, she ran across this idea of building this home or cottage, as she calls it, with straw, like in the Three Little Pigs story. This is actually kind of an amazing thing. It doesn't look like a straw home at all. It looks, there are photos in the story. It looks like, they've covered it with, it's a siding that kind of mimics the tile, those irregularly shaped slats of wood that you would oftentimes see on old timey barns. But it's actually just strips of, I think, of vinyl siding. I'm not sure if it's vinyl or plastic, but anyway, it looks very nice. But this is made of straw. So what they do is the walls are insulated with chopped straw, and it's a building technique that the American Institute of Architects notes is completely carbon neutral and much better for the planet than traditional insulation materials. Klinker said she resisted at first. She said that these building materials that she's familiar with, traditional insulation and more, she says, I'm familiar with those. I worked as a home designer and architect for a time myself. And she said, I was hesitant of using something, that was organic that could break down. But she said when she found out that this whole process that's involved in this, so they take used straw, they soak it, they rinse it. So this is straw that's come out of holding pens or shipping containers for animals. They sometimes put straw in the bottom of those vented shipping containers when they ship livestock on boats. And whether that's on the Mississippi or overseas, that does happen, believe it or not. But also just farmers that could sign up to be a part of this program and get paid for their used straw. So they rinse it in a special chemical compound that doesn't change the makeup of the straw or coat it, but breaks down any bacteria that's going to quicken the breakdown of that straw. And then she said they basically build these hollow walls. They frame the entire building, build these hollow walls, and then they have this hose that is connected to a chopper and has a big vat on the back. And they dump these straw bales in one at a time. It shreds them and blows them into the walls, like if you've ever done the shredded newspaper insulation. Very similar to that, she said. And the cool part for her, it was 1/10 of the cost and has a higher, because it's more concentrated, it has a higher insulation R value, and nothing about the straw whatsoever required any harmful chemicals, anything like that. And the home itself is now 90% straw. I thought that was pretty cool. What's really cool about this, though, is, as Clifford points out in the article herself, she points out that for the advanced technology she worked with as an architect, she said how funny it was for her to realize they're going back to something that they used to do, 100 plus years ago when they built cabins in Montana or Canada. They would build 2 walls with about a foot in between the two, and then they would just break open straw bales, or sometimes they'd leave enough space to actually put a whole straw bale and just jam it down in there. Now, straw bales were different size then than the ones you see in the fields today, but they would just jam them down in there, baled or not. And that was the insulation. And she said, how funny is it that despite all of our advances in technology, going back 100 years ended up being more efficient, cheaper for me as the home constructor and homeowner, and better for the planet. She said, maybe there's a lesson there in a lot of different ways. It's pretty cool stuff. Check it out, and check out the machine. I've linked to a video on our Facebook page. You can do this yourself. I mean, you probably want to do some reading on it, but I'm thinking about it. We'll be back right after this.
Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
Join us at the Nora Eccles Harrison Museum of Art on Saturday, September 7th at 5 p.m. for a special event. We'll start with a free screening of Paño Arte, Images from the Inside, a documentary about Chicano prison art. After the film, there will be conversation with the curator and other experts. Then enjoy a reception with music and refreshments as you explore the Arte Paño exhibition, showcasing over 70 artworks by Latin artists from the American penal system. This event is free and open to all. For more details, visit artmuseum.usu.edu.
This is Travis from Premium Meat Company in Brigham City, Utah. Being recognized as a silver winner in the 2024 Best of Northern Utah is a true honor. We're proud to serve this amazing community.
Hi, I'm Dr. Anita Chandra with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Helmets are important for every bike ride, no matter how short. Did you know helmets are also important to wear when skateboarding, inline skating, or riding a scooter? A helmet can protect against a skull fracture or other facial injuries. Look for a helmet that fits correctly and that's certified for safety. Make sure you and your child wear a helmet every time. For more, visit healthychildren.org or talk with your pediatrician.
In today's day and age, getting the right information in a timely manner is essential, especially when it's about what's going on in your own neighborhoods, in Logan and Hiram, in North Logan and Smithfield, in Providence and Millville, in Tremonton and Preston. Knowing the truth from trusted sources should be available to everyone in our community. Cache Valley Daily is committed to being your link to local news and sports. Know what's going on in your community. Visit CashValleyDaily.com.
The Aggies are heading to USC to face the Trojans Saturday afternoon.
The Nate Dreiling era at Utah State begins with a W.
KVNU is your home for the best game coverage with pregame at 7, kickoff at 9, and postgame and Aggie call immediately after the game. It's the Aggies and the Trojans.
We're going to have a chance. If we continue to fight, it's going to be a fun season. So we'll see you in L.A. Looking forward to it.
Saturday on News Talk KVNU, the heritage home for the Aggies.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Again, another email coming in. Listeners asking about their Aggie Game Day, Ag Day T-shirts. If you bought a ticket to the game on Saturday for $25 more bucks, $29 more bucks, I think, you got a T-shirt with that iconic one-time use Holstein cow patterned helmet that the guys were wearing during the game Saturday night. Well, I guess a lot of people, I don't know if the email went out late or misfired and didn't send to a lot of people. A lot of folks, I guess, got home from the game to find out they were supposed to pick up their T-shirt before 5:30 on Saturday at FanFest. And so people were a little perturbed and wanted to know if we'd heard anything about whether they're going to ship the shirts to those who purchased them or whether there's a place you go pick them up on campus. I don't know, but I did shoot Deputy Athletic Director Bobby Nash an email before the show, seeing all these emails from our listeners, and I will let you know as soon as he replies what those instructions are. But as of right now, I am not sure what you should do if you didn't see that email and pick it up in time. Not to toot my own horn, I saw the email and I picked it up before the game. But it sounds like a lot of people didn't get the email or didn't see it and are hearing after the fact that they should have picked it up before 5:30 on Saturday. I will keep you posted. Again, I sent an email out to Bobby Nash, and as soon as he replies, I will pass it on to you. If it's before today's end of show, if not, first thing tomorrow, I'm sure I'll have heard back from him by then. All right, that's it for hour one of today's show, but I hope you'll stick around. The For the People Book Club with Craig Peterson is next, and we're going to be talking all things Mark Twain, specifically how you can swap